Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, today I've got a story for you about billionaires, workers, and a rigged system. A story of how every crisis is weaponized to further the exploitation of the working class. So here's what you need to know. We've all seen at this point how decades of globalization, monopoly consolidation, and just-in-time production in the service of corporate greed all combined to leave our nation very vulnerable to supply shocks. When the pandemic hit and global shipping routes were thrown off course and millions of people were sickened, this vulnerability left us with huge price increases, shortages, and bare shelves, or what is called in the antiseptic terms of the world of economics, a supply chain crisis. Immediately, neoliberal ghouls and billionaire enablers jumped in to lie to us and try to convince us that the real reasons for this crisis weren't corporate greed, oh no, and weren't late-stage capitalism. The real problem was that working people got a tiny bit of relief in the pandemic. The real problem, as always, was those lazy workers. Politicians moved to starve workers out, cutting off pandemic-era benefits to force a choice on those workers. You either go back to dehumanizing low-wage employment or you starve. They tried to sell us on the idea that the supply chain crisis was caused by a lack of truckers without telling you that deregulation of the trucking industry under Reagan broke the unions that had helped make trucking a middle-class job. Today, port truck drivers in particular can face conditions of modern-day indentured servitude. I'm really not exaggerating. So yeah, who would want to work in that industry? They also tried to sell us on the idea that the supply chain crisis was caused in general by a labor shortage. In reality, plenty of workers will show up for your jobs when they come with dignified conditions and a living wage. So that's the big picture. That's the backdrop against which railway workers in particular decided they had had enough. Already, because of the supply chain crunch, the folks who literally keep the trains running were being worked to the bone. Already, these workers are expected to be on call 24/7, 365 days per year. Their one respite was that they were guaranteed 7 days off per month. But their employer decided that wasn't enough. BNSF Railway, one of the country's largest freight companies, announced they were going to institute a new attendance policy. Now, the details here are a little bit complex, but the long and short of it is that instead of 7 guaranteed days off per month, these workers would only have 2. 2 days off per month. The company, of course, says they have to move to the new draconian and inhumane policy because of a labor shortage. What they don't tell you is that these workers have not even had a cost of living raise in 2 years. Maybe try paying people decently and then tell me whether you're able to find enough folks to move the goods. And oh, by the way, BNSF is owned by billionaire Warren Buffett, who has turned a wonderful profit on this investment. In fact, with shipping costs jumping and demand increasing, BNSF has been notching record-breaking profits in recent quarters. So the company's performing better than ever, but the workers who made that record-breaking performance possible are getting screwed. Surveying this landscape, 17,000 of BNSF's union workers said, hell no, we're not putting up with this crap, and nearly unanimously voted in favor of going on strike. In theory, they should have tons of leverage here. Strikes are all about making a company feel pain. These corporations will only ever act in their own profit-making interest, so you gotta hit them where it hurts, the bottom line. BNSF operates 30,000 miles of train tracks and ships everything from steel and oil to corn and soybeans across 28 different states. Even a temporary work stoppage would be a devastating result for them. There was a huge catch. The railroads are governed by their own special law. It's called the Railway Labor Act. It's a 1926 law that leaves it to a judge to decide under what circumstances railway workers are allowed to strike. A judge gets to decide whether the workers' cause is worthy or not. So looking at the exploitative practices, the lack of a raise, the record-breaking profits, guess whose side our wonderful neutral court system came down on? Naturally, they decided to side with the company and screw the workers. A federal court in Texas just issued a temporary injunction against striking, arguing that the harm to the company of a strike would be far greater than the harm to the workers of not going on strike. I like the way they explicitly weigh corporate profits more heavily than workers' lives. But what's more, they point to the corporate-caused supply chain crisis as a reason to kill the strike. Here is that quote. The record further establishes that a strike would exacerbate our current supply chain crisis, harming the public at large, not just BNSF. A temporary restraining order will thus serve rather than disserve the public interest. And there it is. Corporate greed created a supply chain crisis. Corporate greed led BNSF to underpay their workers, causing their own internal labor shortage. Rather than solving that self-created crisis by lifting pay, Corporate greed led BNSF to shift that entire burden onto their existing workers. And then federal judge comes in to point to the supply chain crisis caused by corporate greed in the beginning in order to cut off the one source of power that those workers have to fight back. What a system, folks. And somehow, all of this is considered to be in the public interest because your only value and the only part of you that anyone considers is your worth as a consumer. Now, this injunction is just temporary. The union still has legal avenues to pursue, but frankly, it's not looking too good. It seems unlikely the next court challenge will go any different next time around. And I don't know about the workers, but the union leadership is adamantly opposed to engaging in a wildcat strike or slowdown or other action in contravention of the law. To sum up, this little story in a nutshell is how you end up with 40 years of wage stagnation as corporate profits skyrocketed. This rigging is how you end up with near historic numbers of people supporting unions and wanting to unionize, yet union membership continues to fall year after year after year. Sure, Starbucks workers are winning unions. Will they actually be able to negotiate a contract? Sure. Bessemer Amazon workers get another shot at a union election, but will they be any more likely to prevail when Amazon can still threaten and fire them? Sure. These railway workers are unionized and can collectively bargain, but they can't actually use their power in order to get themselves decent terms. So this is how you end up with the illusion of democracy and the reality of corporations blocking the exits at every single turn. And the people with the least power get blamed for the bad results. Rahm Emanuel once famously said, "Never let a serious crisis go to waste." And so the supply chain crisis becomes one more excuse to stick it to the working class. And this saga, it reminded me of... Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.